What's going on, guys? I've done videos about no gun re in the Korean War. No gun re was not a massacre; it was an incident. And now I've done videos on Facebook before, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the video to YouTube to exonerate the U.S. soldiers at no gun re. Okay. First of all, it was not a massacre. It was an incident, okay? Around that time, North Korea used refugees to block their movement. So, or using refugees as shields. Example, shortly before No Gun Re, there was an area near Daejeon where the highway near Daejeon, South Korea, where the U.S. soldiers needed to blow up a key bridge to keep the North Koreans from advancing. Well, there were refugees coming along those bridge, and North Korean tanks were right behind those refugees, and they fired at U.S. soldiers and used the refugees as shields. And the U.S. soldiers did not blow up that bridge despite North Korean tanks advancing because they did not want to harm the refugees. That had happened. And also, reporters from Life magazine were there to cover the Korean War. Life magazine was a very popular magazine in the United States at the time. And one of the reporters reported that the Korean War was a war that the U.S. has never seen before. They were North Korea they were hiding in villages, disguised themselves as villagers, and they were disguising themselves as civilians. They were hiding ammunition in ox carts. It was a war unlike any other war the U.S. has seen before. All right. So we talked about that. Okay. Also, before the no gun re incident happened, okay, and also during when the no gun re incident happened between the 26th and the 29th of July, 1950. Okay, there were reports from the U.S. Army, July 24th, July 26th, and July 28th, about how North Korean soldiers and North Korean guerrillas were disguising themselves as civilians and infiltrating U.S. Army units. So the U.S. soldiers at No Gun Re had those reports. There were also reports of 2 guerrillas in the group at No Gun Re, because near the No Gun Re incident, the U.S. soldiers recovered 2 rifles. One was a Soviet-made rifle, and the other was a Japanese-made rifle, because Japan had occupied Korea before the Korean War. Also, where a lot of them mentioned that No Gun Re was a massacre and not an incident came from the Associated Press. Well, the Associated Press reporter that brought this up, Edward Daly, he does not have a lot of credibility. He was in the U.S. Army during the Korean War, but he was not in the U.S. infantry. He was a mechanic. Okay, he was a mechanic. He also lied and said he got a direct battlefield commission, going from enlisted to officer because he did so well on the battlefield. Well, that did not happen. U.S. Army records state that it did not happen. He also said he won the Congressional Medal of Honor, which he did not do that either. And then the other 2 people who said that No Gun Re was a massacre, Eugene Hesselman and Delos Flint. Okay, even Eugene Hesselman, okay, he stated that there was firing coming from the tunnel. The tunnel is where the soldiers led the refugees. There was a battle that broke out, and they escorted the refugees under the tunnel because they couldn't let the refugees go because they had not completely checked the refugees for weapons yet. Well, even he says that there was firing coming from the tunnel. And the 8th Army published a book said what happened at No Gun Re. And they note that even Eugene Hesselman, who was a critic of the No Gun Re situation, said that there was firing coming from the tunnel. And Robert L. Bateman talked about how No Gun Re was not a massacre, it was an incident. And he published a book. Robert L. Bateman published a book talking about that. All right. Also, they interviewed 49 Koreans that were at No-Gun-Ri, Korean refugees, but only of the 49 they interviewed, only 4 of them reported hostile behavior by the U.S. forces. Most did not report hostile favor. It's also been proven that after the No-Gun-Ri incident, U.S. soldiers rushed over to the refugees and administered medical care. Administered medical care to them. And monsters don't do that. If it's a massacre, people do not do that. Most of the testimony that the refugees give is that there was an airstrike that happened near at No-Gun-Ri. It killed and wounded some of the refugees. And sometimes in war, bombing targets get confused. The miscommunications happen because Robert L. Bateman notes in that book shortly after that, they accidentally bombed one of the U.S. Army office buildings. U.S. Air Force planes did. That happens, unfortunately, sometimes in war. And there's also conflicting reports from the refugees in that situation. Some say they saw rockets and bombs. Others said it was just machine guns from the planes. So some said rockets and bombs came from the planes. Others said just machine guns. So there's conflicting reports on that from the refugees. Okay, also. Before No-Gun-Ri, as I had talked about, that North Korean tanks were behind refugees, using those refugees as shields. Also during that time, North Korea was using boys as young as 10 years old to go monitor American and South Korean troop movements. Okay, immediately after the No-Gun-Ri incident, it was true that the U.S. soldiers did fire into the tunnel, but most of the shots were over the Korean refugees' heads to get them to stay put so the U.S. soldiers could check them for weapons. And after medical care was administered, the U.S. soldiers tried to communicate to the Korean refugees in Japanese. Reason being is because World War II happened just before then, so the U.S. soldiers knew some Japanese, and the Koreans knew a lot of Japanese at the time because Japan had occupied Korea for a long period of time. So, but the American soldiers' Japanese was not perfect, and a lot of it was not fluent. So there was a lot of miscommunication between the refugees as well as the soldiers. And the refugees probably got the wrong idea or the wrong impression that the U.S. soldiers told them that they had orders to shoot the refugees. And that is what happened at No-Gun-Ri. Also, the AP twisted a lot of the veterans' testimony. Herman Patterson was an F Company, U.S. Army, 2nd Battalion, 7th Cavalry Regiment. That was mainly who was at No-Gun-Ri. He was an F Company, and the AP quoted him as saying it was a slaughter. Well, he was talking about a battle in near the Naktong River, not No-Gun-Ri. So he was talking about it was a slaughter, was a completely different battle. And it wasn't a slaughter of refugees. It was a slaughter of U.S. and North Korean soldiers trying to kill each other, not refugees. Also, Lieutenant Carroll was a platoon commander during that time. And he talked about how some refugees were wounded, but they would go get the women and children and administer medical care. A surgeon they had administered medical care to them. And he did not see any U.S. soldiers kill refugees. So, I mean, as in anything, there were a few bad U.S. soldiers in the Korean War, and he did stop some U.S. soldiers from firing at refugees, but these refugees were 300 yards away. Not the same refugees near them at No-Gun-Ri. And they were not hitting anybody. And that was Carroll's testimony. So the U.S. soldiers at No-Gun-Ri did not massacre a large group of civilians. And the veterans' testimonies, by and large, at No-Gun-Ri, by and large, said they did not. And also, many of the Koreans also testified that U.S. soldiers administered medical care to them, and they also were worried about spies and North Korean infiltrators in their group of refugees, and they talked with some of the soldiers about that, some of the U.S. soldiers. So, the No-Gun-Ree situation was not a massacre. It was an incident. Unfortunately, some lives were lost due to miscommunication, and also due to the U.S. soldiers being suspicious because North Korea had disguised themselves as civilians beforehand and gotten really close to U.S. soldiers and killed them. They hid in villages, disguised themselves as villagers, and the U.S. soldiers were always on the edge because of that. And they moved several refugees before No-Gun-Ree. They moved them 1,000 yards behind the battle lines. That is even testimony from the refugees that before No-Gun-Ree, that U.S. soldiers went to their village, told them they had to leave because the battle was about to take place, and they moved them to safe positions. And refugees have testified to that as well. So the 8th Army published and wrote a good book, What Happened at No-Gun-Ree, and then also Robert L. Bateman wrote No-Gun-Ree military incident in the Korean War. So hope everybody's doing well. Take care. God bless, and God bless the U.S. soldiers in the Korean War. Hope it is a small part exonerating them for what happened at No-Gun-Ree. Hope everybody's doing well. Take care. God bless. Oh, and before I let you go, the U.S. Army was very under budgeted at the time during the Korean War. The budgets went from $82 billion to $13.2 billion, and the U.S. Army only received $4.4 billion from that $13.2 billion budget. So there was a lot of budget problems during the Korean War as well. So some of the soldiers weren't trained as well as they could have been, even though they did amazing things in the Korean War to help keep Korea free. So that there was a lot of complications with defense budgets, and there was a lot of complications with because the occupation of Japan was a lot easier than expected. So soldiers had an easy duty, so they weren't trained as hard as they could have been, but it was not due to psychopathic or sociopathic behavior. There were some miscommunications that had happened, but despite all that, the U.S. soldiers did stop the North Koreans. They did stop communism, and they stopped North Korea from taking over the entire Korean peninsula where South Korea could be free. So anyway, hope everybody's doing well. Take care. God bless, and bye-bye. Bye-bye.